You're on air.
Very good. Thank you. So I'd like to call to order the first work session for 2022. And we will be welcoming our new Parks Development Coordinator, Adam Moore, for his first time before council. Thank you, Adam.
Hey, Mayor Gamble, if I could just jump in real quick and introduce Adam a little bit. So Adam joined us in, I think it was October 11th. We poached him from Newburgh, I think at the time, right? He had just started a job in Newburgh, and we were fortunate enough that we brought him on board. And Adam has worked in Flint prior to Newburgh, and where he did some parks development work for the city of Flint, Michigan. And we are really fortunate to have him as part of the team. And he's been jumping right into the mix and moving right along. And this afternoon, we want to give you an update on our parks projects that we've got going on. So I'll turn it over to Adam.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here with all of you. I made a kind of brief appearance at the end of the meeting 2 weeks ago, but didn't really get a chance to talk. Really excited to be here doing park work again, as Peter mentioned. So I spent 5 years back home in Flint between 2014 and 2015. And my job was to reorganize all of our parks. One of the many things, you might be familiar with some of the things, but one of the many things that the emergency financial managers did back in Flint is they got rid of the Parks and Rec department. So as early as, the year 2000, they had over 100 full-time employees working in parks. And in 2014, they had half of my position. So I didn't have a lawnmower, I didn't have a truck, I didn't have a shovel, I didn't have a staff. I had about $300,000 for 70 parks and 3 historic community centers. It was my job to figure out what we do with that. And so I started with about 10 groups in a fledgling Adopt a Park program. And after 5 years, we had 68 of our 70 parks adopted, and built something like 40 playgrounds and 20 basketball courts. Also worked to restore the river, and then work on the city's big brownfield remediation project, turning the old Chevy in a Hole automotive factory into what is now Chevy Commons and a state park. That started off as a phyto remediation project, and we worked to cap and landscape it, and eventually sold it to the county, and now it's been transferred over to the state of Michigan. So happy to be here working with all of you. Again, I tell all my friends and family how excited I am to be working here and how impressed I am with the city of Milwaukee. I think we've got some really great work that we're doing here, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. I will ask for just 2 kind of considerations from all of you. The first is I am not very good at navigating Zoom meetings. So just if you want to bear with me a little bit there. And then also I am not feeling very well today. So I'm just going to try and get through this presentation here. And I think with that, I can share my screen. Is that right? Okay, so just to give you an update on the park development project, just to give you a bit of a review. So the city was awarded $2.25 million from the state of Michigan state of Oregon through the legislative process. These funds are ultimately federal funds that are part of ARPA. And those are broken down to $1 million for Belfour Park, $550,000 for Scott Park, with an additional $60,000 that is allocated in the city CIP. Bowman Bray Park has $700,000. The ultimate goal is to refine the existing master plans for Bowman Bray and Belfour Park. They have master plans that were put together and improved in 2015. And then we're going to create a new plan for Scott Park. Scott Park has a master plan that was completed in 1990, although it was never really implemented. It was repealed by the city. And then, of course, the expansion and the renovations of the Letting Library kind of makes that plan obsolete overall. One of the things that we'll talk about when we look at the timeline, and one of the things that we'll be working through over the next couple of years, is these parks have a different approval process. They're not only starting in different places, but Bowman Bray and Belfour will need to go through the community use service process, whereas Scott Park has a designation that allows for parks. And so we'll just be approving the master plan and jumping right into development review. Estimated budget breakdown. So this looks at all three parks combined. So construction and renovation, $1.235 million. We're looking at architecture engineering fees, which also includes consultants for engagement, at $375,000. Equipment, about $250,000. Site improvements, $200,000. We have land acquisition and right-of-way. We hope that costs about $50,000. We have some work to do and some land to acquire around Bowman Bray Park, which I believe you're familiar with. We have $200,000 set for contingencies, which puts us at a grand total of $2,321,000. And that includes both those ARPA funds and the Scott Park allocation. Just looking at where we started, and you'll notice this is our original parks development timeline. So this is based on what Peter presented to all of you in September and what we put out in our RFQ, and let the consulting world know what we were looking for. But that has changed a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But just to kind of walk you through this in very broad strokes here. So completed, you all hired me. We released and evaluated an RFQ, request for qualifications to hire consultants, and we've identified that consulting team and are working on their scope of work, their fee, and getting them under contract. Coming up very quickly, we will bring before you all the grant agreement. Just 2 weeks ago, we got our grant agreement from the state, and that will be part of the consent agenda for the January 18th meeting. We will follow that up with a contract for our consulting team on February 1st so that we can hit the ground running. We'll be doing existing condition reports for all three of the parks, but Scott Park really needs an existing conditions report because of the changes that have happened in that park with the construction of the Letting Library, and given that it has such an old master plan. Of course, when we do this, we'll be taking into consideration the significant natural resources on the site. And right now, we actually just wrapped up a very good meeting with our consulting teams, talking about planning out our equity-based engagement, which we'll talk a little bit about. We're going to be jumping right into that right away and doing that through the spring and summer. We will bring them before you all council, and I should note that we expect to be doing updates on this project about quarterly or as needed. But we will then bring before you all resolutions for Bowman Bray and Belfour parks, and then we will continue the engagement process for Scott Park. Excuse me, I've got a window here in the way. Oops. Then community service process will begin for Bowman Bray and Belfour Park, and we'll then seek a resolution for Scott Park, bring us forward into the winter of 2023. We're going to keep the Planning Commission updated, but because of the different processes in the park, we want to make sure Planning Commission is involved, particularly with Scott Park, because it's going through that different kind of approval process. And in that winter, we will start the building permit process. We'll look at construction then starting in the spring of 2023. And we expected to be completing this project in the fall of 2024 and cutting the ribbon. However, what we found out 2 weeks ago is that the funds that come from the state legislature have different deadlines than the federal deadlines that were advertised, and we were preparing ourselves, and we actually thought that we might have a little bit more time than what we just discussed in that timeline. But it turns out that the state has set early deadlines and a very hard deadline of June 30th, 2024. That is an expenditure deadline, and all work has to be invoiced no later than June 30th of 2024. And then we are looking at a grant reporting and an expiration of our grant agreement on October 1st, 2024. Now, we had expected to be cutting ribbons in October, and we can still cut the ribbon in October, but all that work had to be done in June. We have been discussing this with the state, and unfortunately right now they do not expect to have an extension process in there. You will see in the grant agreement the word extension, but they do not have a process for that now, and they have told us that although they're leaving kind of the window open, that's not in the cards right now. So what that means is that we've been working with our consulting team to adjust our timeline. We met with the consultants yesterday and again today, and we believe that we can fit our full scope of work into this timeline. But obviously that's going to put a crunch, particularly at the beginning here. And Anne, I see you've got a question there.
Actually, I just wanted to make a comment to the council. I do have a phone call in to Representative Power to see if there's any chance that she can help us with the deadline issue that we're running into. So I'm talking with her tomorrow, and I'll keep you all posted.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that is really, really important. And, we have been talking with groups like the League of Oregon Cities, and we asked about this when we saw the grant agreement, and they were kind of taken by surprise by this as well. So it would, we don't get an opportunity to do this a lot, and we want to do this right, and then it does take time to do it right. Yes, Councilor.
I wanted to ask for a clarification on the prior slide where you were talking about the different parks and the different plans. So just to make sure I understand what has to happen at Planning Commission. So for Bowman and Bray and Balfour, we have master plans, but we'll be putting forward a revision or an update to those master plans. Is that right? And does that have to go through Planning Commission? Yeah,
and that will go through, and if I understand the process correct, and I'm new to Oregon as well, and I might be, hopefully I'm not misstating myself, but the community service use process is what Bowman Bray and Balfour will be going through, but Scott Park has a land use designation that will not require that at all. You can build a park outright on that land at Scott Park, so we won't have to do that.
Okay, that's interesting. I thought, I knew Scott Park had a prior master plan, and I guess it was rescinded according to your staff report, or revoked or whatever. I guess I thought when the master plans were adopted for Balfour and Bowman and Bray, they did the community service use, but that piece hasn't been done yet.
Well, and I will get to this a little bit later, but the idea is that we want to make sure that we refine those master plans and update those with a couple of really specific considerations as we work to, I wouldn't say replan them, but refine those plans. And I'll get to that in a second here.
Okay.
Were there any other questions? So speaking about our community engagement rules, and this is why we're going to be looking at refining these plans is, part of our, or the main focus of our application for these funds, I should say, was to do equity-based community engagement. We want to make sure that we haven't left anyone out of the conversation. And so we are going to be doing new community engagement using those 2015 plans as a starting point, and working on revising those. We also know that the world has changed quite a bit, particularly in the last 2 years. And the importance of having accessible and inviting and inclusive park space and outdoor space is extremely important. And we want to see, recognize the time that has changed and the way that the city has changed and the world has changed. And so we want to be doing new engagement around Bowman Bray and Belfour. And then, of course, while we create a new plan at Scott Park. And we will be working with our equity committee, had a great conversation with our consulting team and the sub-consultants that they brought to the team for engagement. And we met with them with John, the city's equity program manager, and we're going to be really focused on reaching our BIPOC community. Part of our RFQ was to ensure that our consultants could provide real-time interpretation services at any engagement that we do, and then also translation of all of our work. We had a great discussion about that earlier. We also wanted to make sure that any firm that we brought in was able to provide American Sign Language if necessary. And then, of course, we will do interpretation and translation of other language as that comes up. Yes.
Yeah, this is really just a comment that I really appreciate all of that additional information, and that this is really the focus here. And I'm glad that John's involved. And I sort of have been thinking of this as not exactly a pilot, but as a really great opportunity for the city to engage in some hands-on learning around how to do effective engagement, and having a concrete project that we're really working on, I think is a great way to do that. So I'm hopeful that this won't be just a point in time, but it will be a learning that we see incorporated into other engagement processes in the future, as we continue to get better at this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you almost took the words verbatim of what we were talking about as we were wrapping up our meeting with our consultants and John. And we're really encouraging them to get creative. John and I both have a lot of ideas that we've shared with Peter and Ann, and they've brought a lot of ideas to the table as well. And it's not just about getting people involved early on in this project. We want to keep them involved through the project, through the approval process, and also through the construction process, and finding ways that we can keep them involved in the project. And, one of the questions that was asked by our consulting team as they work on their scope is, what are the different metrics and different things that we're going to be looking for in determining success? And one of the things that I think is, at least that I personally think will be a success is what you just said, is learning about how we can better improve the way that we work as a city, but also taking the people that we get involved in this park process, in this park project, and keeping them involved not only in parks throughout the city, but also city government in general. And that's something that I have experience with back in Flint. I've seen how we can take these kind of exciting infrastructure projects, these important play projects, and in our parks that people are really interested in, and we can work to use them as stepping stones into city government and keeping them involved. And that's something that we're really going to be trying to do throughout these 2.5, 3 years.
I love it. And I am so glad that you have that experience in Flint, because people get excited about parks, and it really is such a great doorway to show people how they can make a difference in their community very directly. So, yay!
Yeah, and we're the word excitement in the meetings that we've been having with the consulting team and internally as staff has been used quite a bit, and we're really going to try and push the envelope. And obviously, we're going to keep things in budget, and we're going to manage expectations and not making sure that we run into some of the problems that can sometimes happen with projects like this. But we really want to try and get real creative in what we do here. In order to do that, we put out an RFQ back in November 10th specifically, and that came back in early December. We looked at 6 different evaluation criteria for a total of 100 points. So overall experience and qualifications of the firm, just how long have they been doing this work? Who are they? What's their education? But then also, what is their method and approach? We set up some pretty good challenges in that RFQ, and we wanted to see how they were going to help us do that. We were then looking at experience in 3 specific areas. Equity and diversity-based community outreach was worth 25 points. We were looking for experience with specifically natural play structures, playground safety, and inclusive play. That was worth 15 points. And then natural resources, habitat restoration, and aquatic habitat. We wanted to see experience with that. We don't want to take away from that, and that's it was not the intention by giving it less points, but we know that we will have some of that work to do at Scott Park, but not so much at Bowman Bray and Belfour. But we wanted to make sure that the consulting teams knew about that work that we had to do, and we wanted to give some points to experience in that area. And then also, speaking about trying things out and what we can learn, we were the first RFQ, as far as I know, to offer points looking at certified businesses as either minority-owned, women-owned, or emerging small businesses. So if the lead firm on the project was certified in one of those areas, they received 5 points. And if they had at least one sub-consultant that had that certification, they got 3 points, with a total of 5 for that category. We ended up with 4 submissions. All of these submissions were great. All of them have some experience in Milwaukee, I believe. So we had Lango Hansen. They did the original master plans for back in 2014, 2015. They're also involved in Dogwood Park, I believe. Place is an architectural firm and landscape architecture firm. They did the Letting Library. Tooing Studios is currently involved in Milwaukee Bay Park. And then Greenworks has a lot of experience in the area and also some work in Spring Park. We had a review team of 6 people, myself and Peter from the city, as well as John, and then Tessie Patrice, who's a landscape architect and engineer, works out of the engineering department. We also had Heather Koch from the North Clackamas Parks and Rec district. She's one of their planners and project managers. So we invited her to review and give us her perspective on these evaluations. And then we had a member of the Parks and Rec board. So in addition to the equity committee, we're also going to be working very closely with a lot of stakeholders, including the Parks and Rec board. And so we invited one of their members, and they nominated Jackson Calhoun, who brought a really unique perspective to things as somebody who hasn't been involved in the process before and is also a youth member of PARB. And he really took this very seriously and provided a lot of really good notes for us on his work. Now, we don't have much to compare this to, but we were happy to see that we did receive a proposal from a women-owned business, and then 17 of the 24 sub-consultants that were in these 4 proposals were either a minority, women-owned, or emerging small business certified. So that was very good to see. And this is something that we tried out. We worked with finance to put this together. I know that they had been talking with John about trying to do this in RFQs and RFPs, and it's been replicated now by planning. Yes, Anne.
I just wanted to give you some credit. Adam did an incredible job of pulling this together and is helping us. Actually, the basis of what he did on this RFP is the basis for the work we're doing on the new RFP process and point system that we do around equity. That's going to be before council for a first discussion in March, and then it'll be back before you for approval probably in May. So I just wanted to thank Adam for the amount of experience he brought to this table, and also to let you all know that we're going to be building on this going into all RFPs moving forward.
Thank you. So after, the 6 of us had some time to review all of the proposals, we did see that Greenworks did rise to the top there. All of the firms, as I mentioned, put together really great proposals, but Greenworks did separate themselves out with an average score of 89.3. Place came in second, Lango Hansen in third, and Two Ink Studios rounding them all out. They were all really great, but Greenworks really seemed to encompass what we were looking for, particularly in the natural play areas and the inclusive play areas. We were really impressed with some of the work they did. They've also put together a really strong community outreach team that includes 2 sub-consultants. And we really liked the language that they had in their proposal around the equity work that they would like to do. So just looking at some next steps. So as I mentioned, we got a grant agreement coming January 18th. And then we have been and will continue to refine the scope with our consultants. Peter and I met with them yesterday. The equity portion of our team met with them today, and we're going to be meeting with planning on Thursday to refine our scope of work a little bit more. And then Peter and I will work to negotiate that fee down. We have a lot of ideas, but obviously we got to make sure that we're in budget. And then we're going to try to award that contract in February and hit the ground running right away with a project kickoff meeting. Right away in February. And those are all the slides that I've prepared for you, but I'm happy to answer questions about this project or anything else park related.
Anybody, anything? It was a great presentation. It's very exciting how fast this has gotten moving, and great firms, all of those. So.
Yeah, we're very excited, and we are going to have to move very quickly on this. Even at 2.5 years, that does sound like a lot of time, but with the amount of public planning that we want to do, the approval processes, and then obviously construction, it's going to be very tight. So we're definitely going to be trying to hit the ground running right away in February, even more so than we already have. You guys are a lot nicer than the Flint City Council. Come on.
we have our moments.
We could throw something at the screen or something, but no, this was really terrific, Adam, and thank you for joining us, even though you're not feeling great today. I'm really excited to have your experience, in particular, in the seat for these projects. It's really we couldn't have asked for better guidance, I don't think, for what we really want to accomplish with these parks, which is create public spaces that are really truly inclusive and welcoming to everyone in our community. And we all use the parks, and that lens hasn't always been applied when we develop them, and so folks are missing out on opportunities there. So I think we'll end up with great parks that are better for everyone by really leading with this approach. So thank you for joining us for this pell-mell 2.5 year process.
Well, I have had tighter deadlines, but I would just kind of echo that, or maybe reverse that and say that, thank you all for having me here. There aren't, I guess it's maybe a little bit more common out here in the Pacific Northwest, but you all are really picking this mantle up and moving it forward very strongly. And I'm very serious when I say that. I'm impressed by the work that is being done here around equity, around climate change. And this was the sort of home that I was looking for. It's really nice to be in a place where I feel kind of equally and simultaneously both challenged, but also like really supportive. And I think that we're going to have a really good couple years and wind up with some really good lessons learned. We're going to get creative and we're going to try new things. And that means that some of them aren't going to always be totally successful. But it's nice to be at a place where we feel supported to try that and come away with not only great parks, but a lot of new people involved in the government process. That is, I think, ultimately our goal with this stuff. And parks is just such a really good vehicle for that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Right. Go,
Thanks, Adam.
go get better.
Can I, sorry, folks, I dropped off. I had some technical difficulties and I had missed the last bit. And I can catch up. I'm not asking you to retread, but I wanted to ask, assuming it didn't get discussed already, is there any thought about, in the process of all this outreach, also talking about renaming these parks?
Yeah, we haven't specifically talked about whether or not we will rename them. Not, at least I have not been part of that conversation. I will say that John and Scott and I have been working with some people to dive into the history of these parks and try to learn who these parks are named after. Belfour seems to be named after the street. We think that there might be some ties over to Lord Belfour, Chancellor Belfour. I'm not sure what their title was, but someone over in England who was involved in Palestine being carved out. And so, that's that might be a connection there that we want to look at. Bowman Bray and Belfour, Bowman Bray. We're not exactly sure who those people were, but they are named after the streets as well. Where those street names come from, we're not sure. Scott Park is named Scott Park. There is a deed restriction on that park. The land was donated by the Scott family, and we have to keep that name at Scott Park.
I did just want to interrupt. Adam, great answer. That was excellent. And actually, Scott helped with some of that research, and I really appreciate that the History Museum and Scott jumped in on that. There has been a discussion for Balfour in particular about a renaming of that park, and that is actually something we've been asked to look at by Representative Power, and that was an agreement that Councillor Nicodemus and I made to her when we were having that conversation. So for that park in particular, we will be looking at the naming process. It'll be a part of our equity discussion that we have. We have had less conversation around Bowman Bray. But I don't think Adam knew that, so I own that. Sorry. Yeah.
I just think we don't, neither one is a name anyone is very tied to. We don't have a history in this town of particularly original names for our parks. I just think, it should be out there as something to think about when we're going through this process of engaging the community. Yeah.
Councillor Nicodemus, did I miss anything on that? Or okay, I think you're right, Councillor Beatty. We will make sure that we put this into the discussion for both of those two parks.
Great. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Kelly and Ann to talk about the new City Hall design.
Which I think just means Kelly, but I'm happy to jump in and say random things for fun.
I think it's mostly me, but and it's actually going to be pretty short. So, and you have a long night ahead, so maybe you'll appreciate that. But essentially, what we're doing, or what I'm doing, is kind of dusting this project off, to be frank, and getting it going again. So, the last time you all met, I watched the meeting to get up to speed, and it was actually really kind of weird to watch. It was February of 2020. You guys are all in the room and had a cold, which when you're watching it in retrospect is really nerve-wracking to watch someone with a cold in February 2020. Layla and came in and asked you, and Allison, they asked you a couple questions. I just want to make sure I got the right answers from that, and I'm still operating under the same assumptions moving forward, give you the best I can in terms of an updated time frame for design and moving forward, and then let you know about one change that is a little different. So I guess we'll start first with sort of the questions you were asked. You were asked, do you want council chambers to be on the second floor or the third floor? The answer that came back was third floor, mainly due to cost. The second floor is very much set up for office space now, so it wouldn't take that much to reconfigure it. And so I just want to make sure and kind of see, that's all what we said. We said third floor. You also wanted to invest some additional resources, though, in improving the entry and the stairwell, but it was too industrial, was not welcoming. So you all said, yes, let's do that. There was a lot of discussion about doing some tenant improvements downstairs. But ultimately the decision was not really interested in doing the tenant improvements to make it a cafe. At least that's what I heard. So I just want to make sure there was a little disagreement there. And I'm not asking to open wounds. But I just want to make sure that I kind of had that kind of general sense right. But I see hands, so I'm going to stop.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So my hand was up on the first thing about third floor or second floor. Whatever makes the most sense economically, it makes sense to me. But my concern is that is going to be that access to it needs to be access to it without, creating access to the whole building and creating a security issue for the whole building needs to be taken into account, because that needs to be a room that can be used for other things.
Okay, thank you.
I would also just add to Councillor Beatty's statement. We also had a discussion with, and it may have been offline with some of you, which is why I'm saying it here. There are some conference rooms that are available right now outside of glass doors. And there was also an interest in having those more available to the public on app hours as well. So as we're working on that, we'll just want to make sure that happens too. Thanks.
Kathy?
So I do think you recorded the conversation correctly or understood it correctly, Kelly, but I will say after the conversations we had, and I know you were a part of them, on the Community Advisory Committee for the Urban Renewal area, and with the fact that we have redevelopment charging ahead on that end of town, I actually feel pretty strongly that we need to rethink whether or not we're going to actively engage in quote unquote activating that downstairs space and making it into something that is inviting to people. Right now, the public perceives our downtown as being dead. They think we have a ton of vacancies. And it really bothers them. And I hear it online. I hear it in conversation. We heard it on the Community Advisory Committee. When Kelly did a review of our downtown, we actually have a very, very low vacancy rate. That's not the issue. The issue is that we don't have street level storefronts that seem like something is happening in them. And places that seem like they're happening are things like cafes and restaurants that are inviting and engaging for the public. So I know we were trying to save money. I know that we have inflation, but I would really like us to reconsider the question of making that space a cafe and doing something creative. I think it's a real opportunity that we'd be passing up for what ultimately is I think a really worthwhile investment.
I will second that. Not a surprise to anyone. That's what I wanted to do in the first place.
Can I also just say, I think that might mean that we have some other funds. The reason we made this decision before, so we didn't have sufficient funds. I believe that the Urban Renewal is putting some money towards T&I that might allow us more access to be able to do this. So if you decide to change your mind, it may be predicated that we use a portion of the money from Urban Renewal, the T&I fund renewal, to pay for that work. So we're not taking away from other parts of the building.
I'm sorry for my voice. I really haven't really changed my mind on this. I think that I have a real concern about creating a space like that. And I'm open for active. I'm open for engagement, something that really draws people in. Not so big on competing with the coffee shop that's literally a block away. I also have a pretty strong concern about using the urban renewal money on a public building like this that will never become a taxed, come up onto the tax rolls. I think that really needs to be strongly considered by the committee, because that certainly falls into the concerns that our other taxing agencies have with urban renewal generally. And so I think this will be a point of conversation, I think, for them if we start spending money on places like this.
I kind of share those concerns generally. I would like to see the space activated. I don't know that that's a cafe. I don't know that that's a small gym. I don't know that that's what it is, but it may be that by the time we are occupying this building, there will be a bunch of new apartments across, down the block, and there's something going on at the Nelson's Nautilus space. I don't know if anybody's sorted that out, but when I walked downtown with Joseph, they were building out an accessible entrance to that building. Somebody's obviously spending some money to do something in there. So we are seeing reuse, and it may be that the market will, create the opportunity, and we don't have to spend, urban renewal money. I mean, I wouldn't rule that out yet, but I also wouldn't. I think we can see what the market might be about to do in another year from now. I will also say, in terms of activating space, we have a very interesting opportunity with the covered parking in that building to have an outdoor event space for a winter farmers market, for arts and concerts and things in the rainy season, for pickleball courts, for any number of things. I mean, we have some opportunities with that covered parking space to really activate the north end of downtown as well.
You guys are changing your mind and adding pickleball. I'm just kidding. No, I hear you. I hear you. And I think what I'm taking away from this is interest in activating the space because of all the concerns that have been heard about Main Street and downtown. Not wanting that activation to directly compete with existing businesses, and ensuring that if it were going to be even a consideration for urban renewal, that it would actually contribute to the purposes of the urban renewal district, which we have to think hard about given that it's a government-owned building.
I think that is an excellent overview. I do just want to add that any space that is used for profit, we're actually dealing with this right now with Advanis. It does have to pay. We would have to pay taxes on it. So it would only be if it's for a nonprofit or a government agency using that space that we wouldn't. It doesn't mean it's the right. I'm not saying we should do it. I'm just saying that for the tax piece, we would have to pay. We'd have to pay taxes on that space.
And I didn't mean to make a pickleball joke, Councilor Beatty, and I definitely will add the outdoor component because that didn't come up the last time I heard, but I can add that to the list of just sort of, we have new space, and what ways can that space be flexibly used to benefit the community, not just the indoor space, but the outdoor space as well, which I think is something we actually kind of just have to give a lot of thought to, given how much we use our outdoor space here for the community's benefit. So I did hear you. And we'll roll that in. Is there anything else I missed about that? Oh, Mayor.
Kathy, something else?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add real quick. I wasn't proposing that space be developed as competition. Anyone could use that space, just that we seriously consider some sort of food related improvements that would make that space work. And in terms of urban renewal dollars, what we're looking at are some different grant and loan programs that wouldn't actually cost a lot of money, would just bring down the cost for a local small business owner to really make that into a space that's inviting and the kind of exciting space that we all want but can't quite articulate.
Okay, well, I appreciate more to come on all that, but I just wanted to make sure that I sort of had a gut check on where everybody's sitting 2 years later. Is it 2 years? Much later. The next thing I think just to orient yourselves to is, so when the pandemic happened, Anne and we were smart and we realized we might need to change up our plans. And so we actually leased back the building to Advantis through the end of this year. So they're in it and they're not planning to move out until the end of the year. I am having conversations, and honestly, I'm still building the schedule, but right now I'm planning on 6 months of tenant improvements, or our own kind of building improvements that would need to happen after that, which would put us in that kind of summer move-in timeframe. I think we'd all like to make that go faster. I don't know if I can make it go faster yet, but I'm going to try. I'm kind of just starting those conversations now with Advantis to see when, and they're working through their schedule. So if there's a floor they're going to clear out of earlier, and if that floor could be third floor, which is going to take the most improvement time, can we sequence it in a way that we could get that moving a little bit faster? That all is also predicated on my ability to get contracts in place and designers selected and all that fast enough, and to get construction bids in. So there's a lot to do. This is not my area of expertise. So I have asked Anne about using some of our resources to get an owner's rep on board. We had a lot with Layla and Allison, which they were great, but I don't have them here now, kind of that real estate development experience. So getting an owner's rep in to kind of help me make sure that we put the right CMGC contract together. I still think that's the right way to go, is to get the architect, CMGC, that same process that Layla outlined. All I'm adding to it is an owner's rep. So similar to what we had for the library, just to make sure that everything goes well, and hopefully that we can get some efficiencies in the schedule that we're looking for. So I have started that process. That's what you'll see first, is an owner's rep contract. I'll then work with her or him to put the other contracts out and the requests for proposals out for the other pieces, the architect and the CMGC contract. So that will look just a little bit different.
Well, I think that's wise. I think our library project, given all the obstacles that project had, we still managed to pull it off. And I think a lot of that is due to the amazing staff we have, but certainly a good portion of that had to do with the process that we used and the owner's rep and the.
Yeah, I can't say enough wonderful things about Sue, who ran that last year of construction. She was a lifesaver. She was really incredible.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we have once again managed to put you in a situation, Kelly, where you are outside of your field of expertise. You're welcome.
Thanks. Well, I keep the bar low this way, right? Like, you don't really ever have to improve. I just keep doing something different. So that's kind of the kind of general state of play. The only other thing that you won't be surprised to see it, but we do need to think a little bit differently about space. Space needs how we set it up post-pandemic. I welcome, if you come across anyone that's done a major remodel of office space in this new environment that you feel like really has nailed it, would love to talk to them. It'll be certainly something that I'm asking the owner's rep to help us think through. But we do want to be smart and recognize that what we thought we needed may not be exactly what we need today. So it doesn't change those major underpinnings that we talked about in terms of what floor we're on, or any of that. But how people access services are different, how our staff are conducting themselves in meetings. They're in web meetings, as you are all the time. In open air is a little more challenging, right? So we have some learning to do on that front that might change where we end up from where we originally thought we would be. So, but that's it. And what else did I miss?
You did a fantastic job. You were great. I would also just add so I'm going to add two things. One is Scott Stoffer just turned on a screen. I wanted to thank him. He actually has been doing some research on how we make sure that your spaces are technologically advanced so that you're actually able to do a lot of the things that we need to do and make these meetings run smoother. So I just wanted to let you know he's already doing that work. We're having several conversations on it, and that is intentional work early on to make sure that we have all the conduit in place and that we're prioritizing that as we're doing the construction. Another piece of this, just as a reminder, is this is going to be a really fast project. It is actually a really small budget. I know that it doesn't feel like it's a small budget, but we actually didn't want to put a ton of cash into making it perfect. We wanted to make sure we got a building that worked and could bring all of our staff together. So it is going to be a small budget. We will keep you posted if it looks like anything has to be removed. But starting at this year, actually will help us with our budget going forward. It's part of why I'm pushing Kelly to do this now, is because it allows for us to use some of the funds from this year that otherwise we won't have at our to access. So Councilor Beatty or Council President Heinze, that's all I had.
Yeah, it was just a real quick, and I hear all the caveats and absolutely recognize those. I just wanted to mention again, in case someone in the public was not aware of this, we have been talking about trying to make some sort of space work for childcare during our public meetings. And I know that COVID is going to complicate that, but I'm still hopeful that we can make something like that available to the public eventually. Thanks.
Thanks for the reminder.
Lisa?
I guess Anne answered this in part, but I was just going to question the premise that Kelly began with, that we want it to move faster. Is there a particular, is some of it's using budget year money that's going to...
It's also inflation.
You can't just carry that over?
I'm worried about inflation.
Oh. Okay.
So the construction inflation dollars are driving this project up at an alarming speed. So right now, my goal is to try and keep our purchasing power as much as I possibly can. It's possible that some of that will go back down. But that's currently my take, is I want to have an owner's rep on board who can help us navigate the purchasing power that the city has, and make sure that we're maximizing it, because this was already kind of a not expensive project. We didn't build in a lot of buffer. So now with inflation, it's just going to get harder.
I would just add two things. Oh, and before I didn't recap, Councilor Beatty, your access concerns about the third floor, but I just want to say, and Scott, I'm talking to Scott because Scott's going to be my partner in crime on a lot of this. And I think he'll do a really good job of keeping me and the project team honest about access for the public too, just so you know that I didn't miss that piece. The other two downward pressure points I would say is Advantis is moving out. So they're not going to be paying us rent anymore. So we don't want too much time to pass where we're carrying this asset and not using it. Probably, and hopefully, and Joseph's going to do an amazing job on this building. I'm sure he's going to find a great use for it. It's going to be awesome. We're going to need to get out of the way. And then I would just also say, it's been really not awesome to try to retrofit or reconfigure these facilities for safety during COVID. It's been an ongoing challenge, and we've been duct taping it. So I think there's just another kind of institutional pressure that's sort of on top of this too, which is like, we'd like to get to the solution and move forward with the solution to have safer, more comfortable spaces for staff to be in. So I think those are just kind of the three pieces why I would say kind of.
Well, I didn't understand from what you said earlier that Advantis was moving out. I thought you said they were in till the end of the year. So it sounds like they don't need it till the end of the year.
They're planning to stay in through 2022 and then they leave.
Oh.
So you questioning, do you have to get in there before to start the tenant improvement? But I guess I'm counting the clock of them being out of the building in 2022 and us not being in it till 6 months. Mm-hmm. As sort of time I'm paying for something, but we're not getting any lease back funding for. Does that make?
Sure.
So the shorter I can make that.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Better.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, anyone? Yep. Cool. All right. Well, if that's it, and if there's nothing else, Anne, then we all
We have a really late night, and I thought you might want to do the updates because I have 5 updates on the city manager's update, and we could get them out of the way. I'm going to turn it over to Scott and let him actually steal that time, but we have a number of things to discuss with you. Go for it, Scott.
Hello, everybody. Real quick, couple of meeting-related things. As council is aware and as the public was notified yesterday, the retreat scheduled for this Saturday has been canceled. We are in the process of rescheduling it. At this time, I think we're looking at dates in March and April. So just saying it on air, it's been canceled to be rescheduled. Stay tuned. The second thing that I'll jump to is the next 2 items I have are sort of related, so I'll go in calendar order. Next week, as the public was notified today, the City Council is traveling to the Choctaw Museum on the Grand Ronde Reservation. We confirmed with the Confederated Tribes, the Grand Ronde staff today, that the museum is still open and their government offices are still open. So we are, as of today, still a go for going out that way. If anything changes, of course, we'll notify council and the public right away. Let's see. With that, we had talked about pulling together city cars, but given the state of the pandemic, it's believed the best practice might be if folks drive themselves to Grand Ronde. We encourage anybody who's going the same direction who might want to be comfortable sitting in a car with somebody else that might be on this call. Please go ahead and make those arrangements. Highly encourage all members of council and staff, where appropriate and able to, please track your mileage and submit that for reimbursement to the city. Council President Heisey, do you have a question?
Just a comment that our COVID infection rates are exploding, and I don't feel like we've got a guarantee that any one of us won't be sick next week. And I would like for all of council to really be able to participate. We're excited about this, and we've been looking forward to it for a long time. If we're already rescheduling our retreat that's 4 days in advance because of COVID, I would hope that we would also reschedule this visit. I would not want to be a carrier for disease to the Grand Ronde tribe. That seems really irresponsible. Much as I hate to say that, because I am really looking forward to this.
Completely agree with you. And we've been moving forward as we've confirmed from them that they are still open and welcoming the public. We have left the lines completely open for their end, and we acknowledge on our end that we may reconsider. So I suppose if council has other thoughts about that trip, as you all know, this is a rescheduled trip from September of 2020. But we have lots of dialogue with the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde at the moment. So, and complete understanding if we were to suggest to them that we find a date later in the year. As we had noticed it today, we are still planning on going, but open to council conversation on that.
Anybody else have any thoughts? The sooner we can tell them we're not coming and start that process, probably the better. But
I guess I would say, I mean, yes, I agree with Council President Heisey. I think it's I'm hearing from a lot of triple vax people like me who are getting sick right now. And I was double masking last week. So this new virus, anecdotally speaking, it is holding up to what I'm reading in the news, that it's very highly transmissible. And I think that you raise a great point. I think if we can reschedule, it might be wise to do that right now.
We can certainly do that. That sounds like, observing Council Ed Jakes, that sounds like what the consensus is, to offer to reschedule later in 2022.
Councilor Nicodemus, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I would agree with Council President Heisey. I mean, just in my neighborhood alone, 3 households have gotten COVID and they're all vaxxed.
So based on this, we'll make a recommendation to be there in April or May, just knowing that that should be after this spike. And we'll see if we can make it work at that time, but we'll defer to the tribes. Does that work? Okay. Thank you.
I'll look. I got one more, Ann, if you want me to.
Yep. Oh, keep going. You're great.
Okay, so scratch everything I said, and we'll be posting a cancellation notice probably tomorrow about that. So then, also on the topic of the Confederate of the Tribes on the Grand Ronde, we have been discussing city staff, North Clackamas Park staff, and staff from the tribe have been discussing a proposal that was brought to our attention by the tribe for an art installation proposal on the banks of the Willamette River at Milwaukee Bay Park. It's known as the First Herons Project, and I don't want to spill much more of the beans about the content because I want to inform council that on January 19th at the city's Arts Committee meeting, 2 members of the Confederated Tribe of the Grand Ronde staff will be presenting the First Herons art installation project to the Arts Committee. The Arts Committee is also welcoming the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Advisory Committee and the city's Park and Recreation Board to attend that meeting. This is also, of course, a public meeting. It'll be held on Zoom. So I wanted tonight just to flag that to council's attention. It will be recorded. So if you have a conflict on January 19th, I think that meeting starts at 6:30. Kelly, do you remember if that arts meeting starts at 6:30? I think that's its start time. And I think it's going to be one of the first things right off the bat for that meeting. So anyway, 6:30, January 19th, the city will be hearing the first public presentation of the First Herons art installation project. It's a fabulous concept. I think staff is quite literally on the Parks District and city staff side trying to get to the point where we can find this public forum opportunity for the tribe to come and present this idea. So I wanted to make sure that was on your agenda.
In addition, I just wanted to add, I've spoken with council members individually about a secondary project that's tied to the First Herons project, and that is that we are working on a mural at the end of Main Street that'll be done by one of our tribal members. Thank you to each of you. You have each given me permission to spend a small portion of your budgets in order to pay for it because we were under budget on it and unable to make it pencil. So I just wanted to personally thank all of you for your engagement in this discussion and your willingness to help us out. I know Jordan is working on that project moving forward. So it's a really exciting time. We don't want to ruin all the surprises. We're really excited that this is happening. So I'd encourage you to watch the video after it happens. But we just wanted to make sure everyone was in the loop. And honestly, that the community knows that this is happening. So it's not a surprise at a future date.
And after the presentation, staff will come back to council for next steps further in response to that presentation where we need to go after that. So just know, you'll see the presentation. The Arts Committee isn't being asked to particularly make a decision, but it's just a forum for the community to hear the presentation, and then council will get a follow-up afterwards. I think those are my pieces, Ann.
Yeah, and if you want, it's 5:02. We have one more discussion we can have with you, which is Scott and I were going to lead a discussion on your budget, and that would again take another item off of the dais for the regular session. Would you like us to start that discussion here? Mayor, would you like me to wait, or do you want me to? You just muted yourself. Sorry.
What's everybody else think?
I was trying to give a thumbs up, but I can't find my icon there.
That sounds great.
All right. Sure.
Before you launch into something new, can I just ask that Arts Committee meeting, are those recorded? It's a Zoom meeting, but it'll be recorded in some way?
It is a Zoom meeting. My impression is it's not usually recorded, but I have confirmed with staff today that it will be recorded.
Okay.
So this one will be recorded, and we'll make sure it gets onto the city's YouTube channel.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so the other conversation we wanted to have was about your budget, just knowing that we have to construct your budget moving into the next in the next couple weeks. So Scott, do you want to walk through that? We had 2 questions at the end that we wanted to ask you.
Yes, just a minute. Let me find. So the graphic you should all be seeing on your screen isn't particularly interesting, and it's not, if I can zoom in. It's your budget, and this is from the last biennial adopted budget, so you can see all the numbers there. I know it's still kind of small, but I'll zoom in. So what we're going to do is just go through line by line and take a look at what has historically been budgeted from each of your lines that fall under the city council. Ann and Kelly, please correct me when I say something incorrect. But so at the top, the personnel services, the primary line there is council stipends. As you may recall, with the adoption of the last biennial budget, those monthly stipend amounts were adjusted. They now currently sit at $369 a month for the mayor and $307 a month for members of council, and they were tied to be increased. I can't remember, Ann, if it was the Western CIP or another rate, but it's tied to increase along with inflation, I think, basically.
I think it may actually be tied to the COLAs that we approved, but I can't remember.
Yeah. There's an automatic thing where they increase, and those increased for the next biennium will be, that number will be increased to account for those changes. So coming under materials and services, contractual services, that top line there is the good services provided to the city by Willamette Falls Studios, and for the AV support they provide to run our channels for our public meetings. And then also that contractual services line also is where we pay out the Oregon Patrol Services security officer we have on hand during city council meetings when we're in person, which in the last couple of years has not been used too heavily because of Zoom. Then the general office supplies line historically has covered council meals, other miscellaneous office expenses council has had, ordering name badges. It also has historically been where we took money out for the Clackamas Cities Association dinners, that line. But also, I believe, and Kelly, remind me if I'm wrong about this, I believe the events line down at the bottom was set up, though, to help also segregate and cut and pull out what is actually spent on events like CCA by the city council. So general office supplies kind of speaks for itself, meals, and then also CCA historically. Dues and subscriptions are sort of those general memberships that all city council enjoy. This line has also been the home to where special funding for different memberships have been pulled to. I don't remember if we're going to be using that line specifically for the Mayor's Metro Consortium. I know that money sits in several different accounts, but that may be the official line where it comes out of, that kind of thing. So memberships. The next 5 lines, the education and training lines, are $3,000 a year, a fiscal year for each member of council, and $5,000 each fiscal year for the mayor. That is for your conference attendances, other trainings and sessions, and mileage reimbursement for attending meetings. That's what members of council have used those lines for historically. Let's see. And we have an advertising and publicity line, which is pretty minimal. Occasionally it costs money to advertise things and notice things that council does. So I think that's just there. And then there's the other big one here. It's the Art Mural Rolling Fund, which has been sitting in council since it was created. Ellie, Ann and Kelly, did I miss any other notes on the general overview of the budget lines? I'm seeing Ann shake her head. I can't see Kelly in this view. So at this point, before we get to our questions for council, are there any questions from council about the budget in general? Not seeing any. Okay. So then our main recommendation for changes for the upcoming biennium budget is, given the nature of which department in the city spends arts committee money, art related money, it's our proposal recommendation from staff that we move the Art Mural Rolling Fund to the city manager's budget. So it's along with other funding pots of money that support the arts committee's work. I think that's our primary move. I don't know, and Kelly, tell me if I'm wrong too, but I don't know if we're proposing a change in the figure amount there, just moving it to a different budget, the city manager's office.
Right, we would keeping it the same. It's just more because we're administering the sculpture garden funds over there out of that budget. And we also, when we have 1% for art, when we have funds that come in, it's administered out of the city council budget there as well. So it just puts it all in one place.
Good home for all of them. That was our big recommendation. Does council have any questions about that?
And are you comfortable? I had said at the last meeting that if you were uncomfortable with where we were pulling the MMC money from for the lobbyist, that we could have that discussion tonight. Our proposal right now is that we're not planning on spending a lot of money on food in the next 2 years either. So our proposal is that it stays in there, and we just add a note about why we're paying for it out of there, which is that it is a lobbying source for council. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. We're going to play.
Lisa,
Councilor
yep.
Beatty? You're muted, sorry.
Sorry. Somehow my view changed and I couldn't find. So how do we, which of those lines is the food coming out of?
Well, I think for the last biennial budget, we were planning on taking out of the one that says general meals and travel and have 10,000 put into it. But
it's underneath the general, each of your
I see it.
statements.
I see it. I see it. Okay. Okay.
But you guys haven't been eating. No.
Well, you're eating, just not at the city hall.
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, I'm fine with it coming out of there. I don't have a strong feeling about it one way or the other. It seems like it's something that should just be budgeted in as its own self and not sort of stuck in some random category. I'm fine reducing that amount on meals or however you want to do it, and we could literally put it in as lobbyist.
Yeah, we're fine with that. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark, you're pretty confident that it's a thing that's here to stay, right? I mean, it's not going away.
Oh, if anything, it's getting
Bigger.
getting bigger and stronger. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah. Well, it does seem to me like maybe it merits its own line item.
Well, and if it goes away, if it stops being useful, anything that's under the materials and services can be moved into other pots during the biennium. So you all could make a choice to spend it differently. If you didn't spend it there, we would come back to you and have that discussion.
we could hire our own lobby team. 2.
For $3,200. You could, but I think Kelly's more expensive. Just kidding. Okay, then we're going to consider that done. We're going to start working on it. It doesn't mean it's decided. If something changes before budget, y'all get and talk to us about it, and we can talk about it at the budget committee. But we wanted to make sure we were structuring our budgets correctly, at least generally for what you're looking for. So that's all we had for those 2 line items tonight. I think with that, you got 2 things off of your agenda later tonight, and it's dinner time.
And 20 minutes to eat something before the line. So with that, we are adjourned.
Bye, everybody.